The rain drummed steadily against the windows of Pine Valley Diner as Jessica Martinez wiped down the last table of her evening shift. Her dark hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail, and her blue uniform bore the familiar stains of a long day serving coffee and comfort food to the residents of Cedar Falls. She glanced at the clock above the kitchen door and sighed. 7:30. Her blind date was in exactly 1 hour. "You sure you don't want me to cover for you tonight?" asked Tommy, the cook, as he untied his apron. "You look like you'd rather scrub the grill than go on this date." Jessica forced a smile. "Thanks, but Lily would never forgive me if I bailed again. She's been planning this setup for weeks." She grabbed her purse from behind the counter and headed toward the back exit. "Besides, what's the worst that could happen?" The drive to the Golden Spoon took 20 minutes through winding roads lined with maple trees. Jessica had never eaten at the upscale restaurant before. It was the kind of place where Cedar Falls' wealthy residents celebrated anniversaries and business deals. She felt underdressed in her simple black dress and cardigan, but it was the nicest outfit she owned. The hostess, a woman with perfectly styled blonde hair and a practiced smile, led Jessica through the dimly lit dining room. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light over tables draped in white linen, and soft jazz music played in the background. Jessica's heels clicked nervously against the polished hardwood floor as they approached a corner booth. "Your party's already seated," the hostess said, gesturing toward a man with his back turned. Studying the wine menu, Jessica's heart stopped, even from behind. She recognized the broad shoulders, the way he held his head slightly tilted when he was concentrating, the dark brown hair that always seemed perfectly styled without effort. When he looked up at the sound of approaching footsteps, their eyes met across the small distance, and Jessica felt the world tilt sideways. Daniel Thompson, her college boyfriend, her first love, the man who had broken her heart 5 years ago when he chose his career over their relationship. Jessica. His voice was exactly as she remembered, deep and warm with that slight rasp that used to make her knees weak. He stood up slowly, as if moving through water, his expensive suit fitting him perfectly. The boy she had known in college had become a man, broader and more confident, but his green eyes held the same intensity that had once made her believe in forever. Daniel. She could barely whisper his name. Her hands trembled as she clutched her small purse. "What are you doing here?" "I could ask you the same question." He gestured to the empty seat across from him. "Please, sit down. Let me explain." Jessica remained frozen for a long moment, her mind racing. This had to be a mistake, a cruel coincidence. Lily had said she was setting her up with a businessman who had recently moved back to Cedar Falls. She had never mentioned a name, only that he was successful, kind, and looking for something real. "You're the blind date," Jessica said. More to herself than to him. Daniel nodded slowly. "When Lily mentioned she had a friend who worked at Pine Valley Diner, I should have known. But she never said your name, and I thought Cedar Falls was small, but not that small." The hostess had disappeared, leaving them standing in an awkward tableau. Other diners were beginning to stare. Jessica felt heat rise in her cheeks as she realized she had two choices: make a scene by leaving, or sit down and face the past she had spent 5 years trying to forget. She chose the chair. "You look good, Jess." Daniel's eyes swept over her face as she settled across from him. "Really good." "Don't." The word came out sharper than she intended. "Don't start with the compliments. I need a minute to process this." Daniel leaned back, giving her space. "Of course. Would you like some wine?" "They have an excellent selection here," Jessica almost laughed at the absurdity of it. Here was her ex-boyfriend, the one who had told her that a small-town girl like her would never fit into his big-city dreams. Offering her wine at a restaurant that probably cost more than she made in a month. "Just water, please." The silence stretched between them as Daniel signaled the waiter. Jessica studied his face, noting the changes that 5 years had brought. There were faint lines around his eyes now, and a confidence in his posture that spoke of success and responsibility. His hands, once rough from helping his father with construction work to pay for college, were now smooth and manicured. He wore a watch that probably cost more than her car. "So," Jessica said, when the water arrived, her voice steadier now, "Lily mentioned you were successful." "I guess that was an understatement." Daniel had the grace to look uncomfortable. I've been fortunate with my business ventures. Fortunate. Jessica took a sip of her water, using the moment to gather her thoughts. She had read about him, of course. It was impossible not to in a town like Cedar Falls, where local news traveled fast. Daniel Thompson, the boy who had grown up in a trailer park on the wrong side of town, had founded a tech company that revolutionized online security systems. The business magazines called him a visionary. The local paper had run a feature calling him Cedar Falls' most successful export. I heard about your company, Jessica continued. Thompson Tech Solutions. Very impressive. You kept track of me. It wasn't a question. It's a small town, Daniel. Your success story was front-page news in the Cedar Falls Gazette. Kind of hard to miss. She met his gaze directly. The article mentioned you sold the company last year for $800 million. Daniel shifted in his seat. The number was inflated by the press, so it was only $700 million. A smile tugged at the corner of his mouth, the same crooked grin that used to make her heart race. Something like that? Jessica felt a familiar stab of pain mixed with something else. Pride, maybe? The boy she had loved had achieved everything he had dreamed of and more. But the cost of that success was sitting right across from her. Why did you come back? She asked. Cedar Falls must seem pretty small after San Francisco. Daniel was quiet for a long moment, turning his water glass in slow circles on the white tablecloth. I needed to come home. To figure out what comes next? And Lily just happened to set us up. I told her I was looking to meet someone genuine. Someone who wasn't interested in my bank account. He looked up at Jessica. She said she knew just the person. Jessica felt her chest tighten. So she didn't tell you it was me? No. And I didn't ask for details. Maybe I should have. Daniel leaned forward slightly. Would you have come if you had known? The honest answer was no. Jessica had spent 2 years getting over Daniel Thompson. 2 years convincing herself that their breakup had been for the best, that they had wanted different things from life. She had built a small but satisfying existence in Cedar Falls. She had her job at the diner, her little apartment above the flower shop, her volunteer work at the animal shelter on weekends. It wasn't glamorous, but it was hers. I don't know, she said finally. The waiter approached their table with practiced stealth. Are you ready to order, or would you like a few more minutes? Daniel looked at Jessica questioningly. She realized she hadn't even opened her menu. I think we need more time. When they were alone again, Daniel reached across the table as if to touch her hand, then seemed to think better of it. Jess, I know this is complicated. I know I hurt you when I left. But we're both here now. Maybe we could just try to enjoy dinner. As old friends. Old friends. Jessica almost laughed. You didn't lie awake at night remembering the way old friends kissed you. You didn't spend 2 years avoiding places in town because they held too many memories of old friends. But she was here. And despite everything, despite the pain and the years and the vast differences in their lives now, she was curious. What had brought Daniel Thompson, the billionaire tech mogul, back to Cedar Falls? And what did he want from her? All right, Jessica said, opening her menu at last. Dinner. But I want the truth, Daniel. All of it. Why you're really here and what you expect from tonight. Daniel nodded, relief visible in his shoulders. Fair enough. But first, tell me about you. Are you happy, Jess? Really happy? The question caught her off guard. Jessica realized she had been so focused on processing the shock of seeing him that she hadn't prepared for the deeper conversation. That was clearly coming. She thought about her life. The early mornings at the diner, serving coffee to farmers and retirees. The quiet evenings in her small apartment, reading romance novels and tending to her plants. The loneliness that crept in on Sunday afternoons when the rest of the world seemed paired off and content. I'm content, she said carefully. Daniel studied her face with the intensity she remembered. That's not what I asked. Jessica felt her defenses rising. Not everyone gets to conquer Silicon Valley, Daniel. Some of us are happy with simpler lives. I never said you shouldn't be happy with a simple life. But you didn't answer my question. The waiter returned and they ordered quickly. Jessica chose the salmon, something safe and familiar. Daniel ordered the steak, medium rare, exactly how he had always preferred it. When they were alone again, Jessica felt the weight of his question still hanging between them. Happy? Was she happy? Or was she just surviving, making the best of a life that had never quite lived up to her dreams? "I'm working on it," she said finally. "Happiness, I mean. Some days are better than others." Daniel nodded slowly. "I understand that feeling, do you?" Jessica couldn't keep the skepticism out of her voice. "You have everything you ever wanted." "Do I?" Daniel's green eyes were serious now, holding hers across the candlelit table. "Money doesn't fix everything, Jess. Sometimes it just makes the empty spaces more obvious." And in that moment, Jessica saw something in his expression that reminded her of the young man she had fallen in love with in college. Vulnerable, searching, human. The evening had taken a turn she hadn't expected, and Jessica realized that despite everything, despite the pain and the years and all the reasons, this was a terrible idea. She wanted to hear what Daniel Thompson had to say. The conversation that followed would change both their lives in ways neither could imagine. But for now, there was just this moment, this table, and two people who had once loved each other, trying to figure out if there was anything left worth saving. The salmon arrived perfectly cooked, but Jessica could barely taste it. Across from her, Daniel cut his steak with the same methodical precision she remembered from their college days, when even a dinner at the campus cafeteria required careful budgeting. Now he was eating a meal that cost more than she made in 2 days, as if it were nothing. "You remember the night we met?" Daniel said suddenly, setting down his fork. "It was raining then too." Jessica's chest tightened. Of course she remembered. It had been October of her sophomore year at Cedar Falls Community College. She was working late in the library, struggling with her accounting homework, when this guy at the next table leaned over and pointed out an error in her calculations. He had kind eyes and wore a faded flannel shirt that had seen better days. "You bought me coffee from the vending machine?" Jessica said quietly. "Terrible coffee. 50 cents was all I had left after paying for gas." Daniel smiled at the memory. "But you drank it anyway." "I was being polite. You were being kind. There's a difference." His expression grew serious. "You've always been kind, Jess, even when I didn't deserve it." Jessica took a sip of water, buying herself time. She didn't want to walk down this path, but Daniel seemed determined to lead them there. "That was a long time ago. Not that long. Sometimes it feels like yesterday." Daniel pushed his plate away, the steak only half finished. "Do you remember our first real date?" Despite herself, Jessica felt a smile tugging at her lips. "The county fair. You spent your last $20 trying to win me that ridiculous stuffed elephant. You said it was the gleeest thing you'd ever seen." "It was. But I loved it anyway, because you tried so hard." Jessica's smile faded as quickly as it had come. "I kept it for 2 years after you left. Finally donated it to the children's hospital." The admission hung between them like a confession. Daniel's jaw tensed, and Jessica could see the guilt written across his features. Good. She wanted him to feel guilty. She wanted him to remember what he had walked away from. "Tell me about San Francisco," Jessica said, changing the subject before the emotions could overwhelm her. "Tell me about your big success story." Daniel was quiet for a moment, as if weighing how much to reveal. "It wasn't as glamorous as the magazines made it sound. The first 2 years, I lived in a studio apartment that was smaller than your dorm room. I worked 18-hour days and survived on instant noodles and energy drinks, but you loved it." "I thought I did." Daniel met her eyes. "I thought building something from nothing would fill the hole that leaving here created. That success would make me forget what I had given up. And did it. For a while, maybe, when we landed our first major client, when we moved to the bigger office, when Forbes put me on their 30 under 30 list, there were moments when I felt like I had made the right choice." Jessica felt a stab of pain at his words. The right choice. As if staying with her would have been the wrong one. "I'm sure your investors were thrilled." They were. But investors don't care if you're happy. Jess, they only care if you're profitable. So you weren't happy. The words came out harsher than Jessica intended. Daniel was quiet for a long moment. "I was successful. I told myself that was enough. But it wasn't. No, it wasn't." Daniel reached for his wine glass, then seemed to think better of it. "The worst part was the loneliness. I was surrounded by people all day, Every day. Employees, clients, investors, reporters, but none of them really knew me. They knew Daniel Thompson, the CEO. They didn't know Danny, the kid from the trailer park who used to lie awake at night, dreaming about a different life. Jessica felt her anger soften slightly, but she fought against it. She couldn't let herself feel sorry for him. He had made his choices. You could have called. You could have written. You could have tried to maintain some connection to the person you used to be. I was afraid. The simple admission caught Jessica off guard. Afraid of what? Afraid that if I looked back, even for a second, I wouldn't have the strength to keep moving forward. Afraid that if I heard your voice, I'd realize I was making the biggest mistake of my life. Jessica set down her fork with trembling hands. So instead, you just vanished. Left me a note and disappeared like I meant nothing to you. You meant everything to me. That was the problem. That's a convenient way to rewrite history. Daniel leaned forward, his green eyes intense. It's not rewriting anything. It's the truth I was too scared to admit then. I loved you so much that it terrified me. I thought if I stayed, if I chose the safe path, I'd end up resenting you for holding me back. And if that happened, if I poisoned what we had with bitterness and regret, I'd never forgive myself. Jessica felt tears stinging her eyes and blinked them back furiously. She wouldn't cry. Not here, not in front of him. So you made the decision for both of us. You decided I wasn't worth the risk. I decided I wasn't worth the risk of hurting you more than I already was going to. Well, congratulations. You hurt me anyway. The words hit Daniel like a physical blow. Jessica could see it in the way his shoulders sagged, in the way his hand tightened around his water glass. For a moment, they sat in silence while the restaurant continued its quiet bustle around them. Tell me about the years after, Daniel said finally. Tell me what I missed. Jessica almost refused. The last thing she wanted was to bare her soul to the man who had broken her heart. But something in his expression, a genuine need to understand the consequences of his choices, made her reconsider. The first year was the hardest, she began, her voice barely above a whisper. I kept thinking you'd change your mind, that you'd realize Silicon Valley wasn't worth losing what we had. I applied for jobs in San Francisco, thinking maybe I could follow you. Daniel winced. Jess, ... I didn't, obviously. My pride wouldn't let me chase after someone who didn't want me enough to stay. Jessica took a shaky breath. I finished my degree. Got the job at Pine Valley Diner because it was the only place in town that was hiring. Told myself it was temporary, just until something better came along. But nothing did. Oh, things came along. I was offered a position at the bank and another at the county clerk's office. Better pay, better hours, more prestige. Jessica shrugged. But by then, I'd realized something. The job wasn't the problem. I'd stopped believing I deserved better. The confession hung in the air between them. Jessica had never said those words out loud before, not even to Lily. But sitting across from Daniel, seeing the success he had built for himself, she couldn't pretend anymore that she hadn't let his leaving break. Something fundamental inside her. I dated, she continued, determined now to tell him everything. Nothing serious, but I tried. There was Mike, the guy who owned the hardware store. Sweet man, good with his hands, would have made someone a wonderful husband. And there was Paul, the new teacher at the elementary school. Smart, funny, kind to children, but they weren't you. The words slipped out before Jessica could stop them. She felt heat flood her cheeks. I mean, they didn't understand me the way you did. Didn't make me feel like I could be more than I was. Daniel's eyes were bright with something that might have been hope. Jess, ... don't. Jessica held up a hand to stop him. Don't read more into that than there is. I'm just being honest about why those relationships didn't work. It took me a long time to realize that I was comparing everyone to a memory, to a version of you that probably never really existed. What do you mean? Jessica gathered her courage. I idealized what we had, Daniel. In my mind, you became this perfect love that I'd lost. But the truth is, we were kids. We were 22 years old and thought we knew everything about love and life and what we wanted from the future. Maybe we would have grown apart anyway. Maybe you leaving was just honest about what was already happening. Daniel shook his head slowly. I don't believe that. You don't want to believe it because it's easier to think. We were some great tragic love story then too. Admit we might have just been to college students who weren't ready for forever? Is that what you really think? Retry. Jessica looked into his eyes and felt the familiar flutter in her chest that his attention had always caused. Even now, even after 5 years and all the hurt between them, Daniel Thompson could still make her feel like the most important person in the room. I don't know what I think anymore, she admitted. Seeing you here like this, it's bringing up feelings I thought I'd buried. What kind of feelings? Jessica hesitated. The smart thing would be to deflect, to keep her walls up, to protect herself from getting hurt again. But she was tired of being smart. Tired of being safe. Anger, she said finally. Sadness, regret, and underneath all of that, if I'm being completely honest, relief that you're here. That you're real. That you're not just the ghost I've been carrying around for 5 years. Jessica's voice dropped to almost a whisper. Relief that you came back. Daniel reached across the table and covered her hand with his. His skin was warm, his touch gentle, but sure. I came back for you, Jess. Don't say that. It's true. I sold the company, liquidated my assets, came home because I realized that all the success in the world doesn't mean anything if you don't have someone to share it with. Jessica pulled her hand away. You don't get to do this. You don't get to waltz back into my life with your billions of dollars and expect me to fall into your arms like nothing happened. I'm not expecting anything. I'm hoping. There's a difference, is there? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like Daniel Thompson has decided he wants his small-town girlfriend back. And he's used to getting what he wants. Daniel's expression hardened slightly. That's not fair. Fair. You want to talk about fair? Jessica's voice rose slightly, and she noticed a few other diners glancing in their direction. She lowered it again, but the intensity remained. Fair would have been a phone call on my birthday. Fair would have been a text asking how I was doing. Fair would have been any acknowledgement over the past 5 years that I existed. You're right. You're absolutely right, and I'm sorry. I'm sorrier than you'll ever know. Daniel's voice was thick with emotion. I handled everything wrong. I was a coward and a fool, and I hurt the best thing that ever happened to me. Jessica felt her resolve wavering. This was the Daniel she remembered, the one who could admit when he was wrong, who could be vulnerable and real. But she couldn't let herself be swayed by pretty words and regret. Sorry doesn't give me back 5 years of my life, Daniel. Sorry doesn't erase the nights. I cried myself to sleep wondering what was wrong with me that you could walk away so icily. Nothing was wrong with you. Everything was wrong with me. Stop. Jessica pushed back from the table. Just stop. I can't do this. I can't sit here and listen to you apologize and make excuses and try to justify what you did. It's too much. She stood up, her legs unsteady beneath her. The restaurant seemed to tilt slightly and she gripped the edge of the table for support. Double quotes, Jess, please. Don't run away. Let's talk about this. Talk about what? About how you chose your dreams over me? About how you built an empire while I stayed in the same small town, working at the same dead-end job, waiting for someone to love me the way you did. Jessica's voice cracked on the last words. Daniel stood as well, his face stricken. I never stopped loving you. Then why didn't you fight for me? Why didn't you ask me to come with you? Why didn't you give me the chance to choose? The question hung in the air between them. Years of pain and confusion crystallized into those few words. Daniel opened his mouth to answer, then closed it again, his face pale. That's what I thought, Jessica whispered. She grabbed her purse from the table. Thank you for dinner. And congratulations on your success. I hope it was worth it. She turned and walked toward the exit, her heart pounding so hard she was sure everyone in the restaurant could hear it. Behind her, she could hear Daniel calling her name. But she didn't turn around. The cool night air hit her like a slap when she stepped outside. She had made it halfway to her car when she heard footsteps behind her. Just wait. She stopped but didn't turn around. What, Daniel? What could you possibly say that would make any of this better? I was afraid you'd say no. The words were so quiet she almost missed them. Jessica slowly turned around. Daniel stood a few feet away, his expensive suit rumpled, his hair disheveled from running his hands through it. What? You asked why I didn't ask you to come with me? The truth is, I was afraid you'd say no. I was afraid you'd choose Cedar Falls, and your family, and you're safe. It's a predictable life over taking a risk with me. His voice broke slightly. And I was more afraid that you'd say yes and end up hating me for taking you away from everything you loved. Jessica stared at him, speechless. In all her imaginings about why he had left, she had never considered that possibility. I thought I was protecting you, Daniel continued. I thought I was being noble, making the hard choice so you wouldn't have to. But the truth is, I was protecting myself. I was too much of a coward to risk hearing you say that I wasn't worth leaving everything behind for. Tears were flowing freely down Jessica's cheeks now. You idiot. You complete and total idiot. I know. I would have followed you anywhere. I would have lived in that studio apartment and eaten instant noodles and supported your dreams because I believed in you. I believed in us. I know that now. God, Jess, I've known it for years. But by the time I realized what I'd thrown away, it felt too late to try to get it back. Jessica wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. So what changed? Why now? Daniel took a step closer. Because I realized that all the money in the world can't buy back 5 years of your life. Because I woke up every morning in my penthouse apartment, surrounded by everything I thought I wanted, and felt completely empty. Because I finally understood that success without love isn't success at all. They stood facing each other in the parking lot. 5 years of hurt and longing stretched between them like a bridge neither was sure they could cross. I don't know how to trust you again, Jessica whispered. I don't know how to be the man you deserve, Daniel replied. But I want to try, if you'll let me. Jessica closed her eyes, feeling the weight of the decision before her. She could walk away now, protect her heart, return to her safe, if small life. Or she could take the biggest risk she'd ever taken and see if love could survive the damage they'd both done to it. When she opened her eyes, Daniel was still there, waiting. Jessica's apartment above the flower shop was nothing like Daniel remembered her dorm room. Where college Jessica had surrounded herself with bright colors and inspirational quotes, adult Jessica lived in muted tones and careful simplicity. The walls were pale gray, the furniture practical and understated. It was the home of someone who had learned not to want too much. Coffee? Jessica asked, her voice still shaky from the emotional confrontation in the restaurant parking lot. She moved around the small kitchen with nervous energy, grateful for something to do with her hands. Please. Daniel sat on the edge of her couch, now looking oddly out of place in his expensive suit among her modest furnishings. This is nice, Jess. Cozy. It's small, Jessica corrected, measuring coffee grounds with unnecessary precision. But it's mine. They had driven separately from the restaurant. Jessica, needing those few minutes alone to compose herself, when she pulled into her usual parking spot behind the building, she was surprised to see Daniel's black sedan already waiting. He had remembered where she lived, apparently. The coffee maker gurgled to life, filling the quiet space with familiar sounds. Jessica leaned against the counter, watching Daniel take in her life. She wondered what he saw when he looked around. Did he see contentment or resignation? Security or limitation? Tell me about the real reason you came back, she said. And don't say it was just for me. Nobody walks away from $800 million because of a girl they dated in college. Daniel smiled ruefully. You always could see right through me. He loosened his tie, the first crack in his polished exterior. There was an incident last year. A wake-up call, I guess you could say. What kind of incident? I had a heart episode. Not a full attack, but enough to land me in the hospital for 3 days. Daniel's voice was matter of fact. But Jessica could see the shadow of fear in his eyes. I was 32 years old, in supposedly perfect health, and my body was shutting down from stress. Jessica's hand flew to her throat. Daniel, ... The doctor said I was lucky. That if I'd pushed much harder, for much longer, the next episode might not have been so mild. He ran a hand through his hair. I was lying in that hospital bed, surrounded by machines and nurses, and I realized I had nobody to call. No family member who would drop everything to be there. No girlfriend who would worry about whether I made it through the night. I had employees who needed me functional and investors who needed me profitable. but nobody who needed me alive just because they loved me. The coffee finished brewing, but Jessica made no move to pour it. That must have been terrifying. It was clarifying. I started thinking about what I wanted my life to look like in 10 years, 20 years. Did I want to keep building companies and making deals and accumulating wealth until I died alone in some boardroom? Daniel met her eyes. Or did I want to find my way back to the person I used to be? Back to the things that actually mattered. So you sold everything. Not everything. I kept enough to live comfortably, to pursue projects I care about. But the rest, the company, the penthouse, the lifestyle that was killing me slowly, I walked away from all of it. Jessica poured 2 cups of coffee, adding cream to hers and leaving his black, exactly how he used to drink it. And then you came home. I came home to see if there was anything left of Danny Thompson. The boy who used to believe that love was the most important thing in the world. She handed him his coffee, wrote careful not to let their fingers touch. And what did you find? I found that Cedar Falls looks exactly the same. That Pine Valley Diner still serves the best apple pie in 3 counties. That Mrs. Henderson still tends the most beautiful garden on Maple Street. Daniel paused, his eyes never leaving Jessica's face. And I found that some things are worth more than all the money in Silicon Valley. Jessica felt her carefully constructed walls beginning to crumble. Daniel, I can't be your midlife crisis. I can't be the small-town girl who makes you feel normal again just so you can decide in 6 months that you're bored and want to go back to your real life. This is my real life. Cedar Falls. This conversation. You. This is the most real I've felt in 5 years. How do I know that? How do I know you won't wake up tomorrow and realize you've made a huge mistake? Daniel set down his coffee cup and stood up, moving to the window that overlooked Main Street. The evening light cast long shadows across his face. You don't know that. I can't give you any guarantees, Jess. But I can tell you that every major decision I've made in the past 5 years was calculated, analyzed, and planned down to the smallest detail. Coming back here, asking Lily to set me up with someone real, hoping against hope that it might be you, this is the first thing I've done purely on faith. Faith in what? Faith that some things are worth the risk, that some people are worth fighting for. Even if you've already lost them once. Jessica moved to stand beside him at the window. Below them, Cedar Falls was settling into evening. The streetlights were beginning to flicker on, and she could see couples walking hand in hand toward the movie theater. Families heading home after dinner, teenagers gathered around the old fountain in the town square. I built a good life here, she said quietly. Maybe not exciting or impressive, but good, peaceful. I volunteer at the animal shelter. I have book club on Thursday nights. I know every customer at the diner by name, and they know mine. It's not much by your standards, but it's enough. I never said it wasn't enough. You didn't have to. The day you left made it very clear that what I had to offer wasn't enough to compete with your dreams. Daniel turned to face her fully. I was 22 and stupid and so scared of failing that I convinced myself success was the only thing that mattered. I thought if I could just make enough money, win enough awards, get enough recognition, I'd finally feel like I was worthy of being loved. And now, I know that feeling worthy of love isn't something you can earn. It's something you have to accept as a gift from someone who sees value in who you are, not what you've accomplished. Jessica felt tears threatening again. I'm not the same person I was in college, Daniel. That girl who believed in fairy tales and happy endings? She's gone. What you see now is what 5 years of disappointment looks like. You're wrong. Daniel's voice was gentle but certain. That girl is still there. I can see her in the way you made sure I had black coffee without asking how I like it. In the way you rescued that cat from the storm drain last month and spent 3 days nursing it back to health before finding it a home. How did you know about the cat? Daniel looked sheepish. I may have asked around about you before tonight. Cedar Falls is still a small town, Jess. People talk. You've been spying on me? I've been trying to understand how much damage I did when I left. Trying to figure out if there was any chance you might forgive me. Jessica walked to the small bookshelf in the corner and pulled out a photo album she hadn't opened in years. She flipped through the pages until she found what she was looking for, then held it out to Daniel. It was a picture of them from the county fair, taken just a week before he graduated. Jessica was laughing at something he had said, her head thrown back in genuine joy. Daniel was looking at her instead of the camera, his expression soft with love and wonder. "I used to look at this picture and remember how happy we were," Jessica said. "But lately, when I looked at it, all I could see was how naive we were. How unprepared for the real world." Daniel studied the photo intently. "We look so young. We were young. Too young to make forever promises. Too young to know what we were talking about when we said we'd love each other no matter what. Do you regret it? Loving me?" The question hung in the air between them. Jessica took the photo back, running her finger along the edge. "I regret trusting you with my whole heart when you weren't ready for that kind of responsibility," she said finally. "But I don't regret loving you. That love taught me I was capable of feeling something real and deep. Even if it didn't last. What if it could last now? What if we're finally old enough and wise enough to do it right?" Jessica closed the photo album and hugged it against her chest. "What exactly are you asking me, Daniel?" "I'm asking if you'd be willing to try again. Not to pick up where we left off because we're different people now, but to start over. To see if what we had was worth saving. And what would that look like? You moving back to Cedar Falls permanently? Giving up the business world entirely?" "I've already given up the business world. As for moving back permanently, I'd like nothing more. I've missed this place. I've missed feeling connected to a community instead of just being another face in the crowd." Jessica set the album down and moved to the kitchen island, putting physical distance between them while she thought. "Let me ask you something. If I had said no tonight, if I had walked away and never looked back, what would you have done?" Daniel considered the question carefully. "I would have respected your decision. I would have found a way to build a life here that didn't revolve around trying to win you back. I came home to find myself, Jess. Not just to find you. You're the best part of what I'm hoping for. But you're not the only part. What else do you want?" "I want to buy some land outside town and build a house with my own hands. I want to start a foundation that helps kids from backgrounds like mine get access to technology education. I want to coach Little League and volunteer at the fire department and know my neighbors' names." Daniel's voice grew stronger. With each word, "I want to be the kind of man this town can be proud of, not because of what I've achieved, but because of how I treat people." Jessica felt something shift inside her chest. This wasn't the ambitious boy who had left Cedar Falls 5 years ago, focused solely on conquering the world. This was a man who had conquered the world and realized it wasn't enough. "There's something I need to tell you," she said, "about why I never left town, never tried to build something bigger for myself. You don't owe me any explanations. Yes, I do. Because if we're going to try this, if we're going to start over, you need to understand who I am now." Jessica took a deep breath. "After you left, I was so angry and hurt that I made a decision. I decided I would never again care about anyone or anything enough to be devastated when it was taken away from me. I chose smallness because smallness felt safe." Daniel waited silently for her to continue. "I turned down the job at the bank because taking it would have meant I was trying to better myself. And trying meant risking failure. I ended things with Mike and Paul not because they weren't you, because caring about them meant opening myself up to being hurt again." Jessica's voice was barely a whisper now. "I've spent 5 years building a life so small and safe that nothing could touch me. And I've been miserable, Jess. ... I want more. I've always wanted more. I want to travel and take risks and build something meaningful with my life. But I've been too scared to try because trying meant admitting that you were right to leave, that there was a bigger world out there worth reaching for." Daniel crossed to her then, stopping just close enough that she could feel the warmth of his presence. "You weren't holding me back, Jess. I was holding myself back. I was so afraid of not being good enough that I convinced myself the only way to become worthy was to do it alone. What if we're both different people now? What if we don't fit together anymore? Then we figure it out as we go. But we figure it out together." Jessica looked up into his green eyes and saw the boy she had fallen in love with, older and scarred by life, but still fundamentally the same person who had spent his last $20 trying to win. Her a stuffed elephant. "I'm scared," she whispered. "Me too. But I'm more scared of spending the rest of my life wondering what might have been." Daniel reached up slowly, giving her time to pull away, and cupped her face in his hands. His thumbs brushed away tears she hadn't realized were falling. I love you, Jessica Martinez. I never stopped loving you, not for a single day in 5 years. And if you'll let me, I want to spend the rest of my life proving that I'm finally brave enough to choose love over fear. Jessica closed her eyes and leaned into his touch. I love you too. God help me, I never stopped either. When she opened her eyes again, Daniel was smiling, the same crooked smile that had made her believe in forever when she was 20 years old. So what happens now? She asked. Now we take it one day at a time. We go on real dates and have fights and make up and figure out how to build something lasting together. What about the town? People will talk. They'll say I'm a gold digger who trapped the local success story. Let them talk. Anyone who knows you will know better. And anyone who doesn't know you doesn't matter. Jessica laughed shakily. When did you become so wise? Expensive therapy and 5 years of missing the best thing that ever happened to me? She stood on her tiptoes and kissed him then, now soft and tentative at first, then with growing certainty. He tasted like coffee and possibility, like coming home after a long journey, when they broke apart. Daniel rested his forehead against hers. I promise I won't hurt you again, Jess. I promise I'll choose us every single day for the rest of my life. I promise to let you, she whispered back. And I promise to choose myself too. To want more and risk more and be brave enough to believe we deserve a happy ending. Outside the window, Cedar Falls twinkled with lights and life and second chances. Inside the small apartment above the flower shop, two people who had lost each other began the long, beautiful work of finding their way back home. 6 months later, Daniel kept his promise to build a house with his own hands. Jessica kept her promise to want more by enrolling in online business courses and dreaming of opening her own restaurant. They kept their promise to choose each other by planning a simple wedding in the town square, surrounded by the community that had shaped them both. But those are stories for another day. For now, it was enough that love had survived distance and time and the terrible mistakes people make when they're too young to know better. It was enough that sometimes, when the stars align just right and two hearts are finally ready, you get a second chance to write a different ending. And sometimes, just sometimes, that ending is exactly what you always hoped it would be.